Hello and welcome to the Tennessee Informer. Thank you all for being with us. In 2026, we'll not only be electing a new governor, but new members to the General Assembly. And not only do we need to elect a staunch constitutional conservative with strong Christian principles to be our governor, we need to elect them to the General Assembly as well. In District 78, the incumbent Mary Littleton is not seeking re-election. One of the men that hopes to win that seat and represent District 78 is John Louallen. He'll be joining us in just a few minutes to tell us about himself, his beliefs, and why he is running for office. This episode of the Tennessee Informer is part of our ongoing effort to help you get to know the candidates so you can make an informed, educated decision. That's our commitment to you. But first, it's time for the Informer Report. If you haven't heard about Senate Bill 1958 and House Bill 1971 by Senator Stevens and Representative Farmer, you need to. This bill is dangerous. This bill is a flat-out infringement on our rights. Now, I'm going to read you, this is an overview from Tennessee Firearms, and this is in reference to this bill and these two representatives. If you're not aware, these two Republican legislators and several more have proposed a change in Tennessee law that is not merely a procedural refinement. It is, to the contrary, an effort that is far more evil. It is an attempt to ban Tennesseans from access to the courts if they seek to facially challenge the constitutionality of a state statute or seek a pre-enforcement challenge. Essentially, these two and other legislators apparently believe that whatever they want to do as a legislator is beyond your right to question it, and it should be beyond the constitutional authority of the judiciary to review it to determine if the legislature violated constitutional limits. Now, I can't get into this too deep tonight, but Wednesday night at 9 o'clock, I'm going to do a show with Richard Archie from Tennessee Firearms Association. We have a lot more information on this, but I will tell you that this is going to be a problem, a serious problem. This is not one of those bills that, well, you know, I'm not too, no, you need to worry about it. You definitely need to worry about it. Now, this past week in the Senate, it didn't make it through. It was 4-4-1. Kerry Roberts did not vote, but the bill is still alive. So there are procedures that they can take to bring it back up, and from what I understand, that's happening. I don't have a date yet on when the Senate bill will be back in the committee or go to the floor, because I think that is a possibility too, from what I understand. But the House bill is scheduled for March 11th. So they may very well do the Senate again before that. So you need to call everybody on the Senate Judiciary and everybody on the House Judiciary Committee and tell them to vote no on this legislation. But make sure you tune in this Wednesday, 9 p.m. with Richard Archie, and we'll give you a lot more detail on this issue. The Residency Integrity Act. This safeguards Tennessee ballots from beyond. This safeguards Tennessee ballots. We have a problem with overseas voters who are not residents of Tennessee or have never lived in Tennessee, but some of them can still vote in Tennessee elections. That's flat out wrong. That's got to be addressed. So the bill numbers again on that are House Bill 851 and Senate Bill 1029, and that will be in the Campaign Finance Committee, I believe it is, this week. I want to say the day after tomorrow, but if you go to tnfairelections.org, they'll give you the information on all their bills. Now, guys, I'm going to cover a few bills tonight, but I can't do them justice, and I cannot possibly cover every bill you need to know about. So you're going to have to do some digging on your own, but I will give you some websites to go to. So for anything election-related, go to TennesseeFairElections.com. Now, originally that federal law was designed to protect military voters, but we found out that more than half of the voters from Tennessee are civilians, not military or their dependents. And they don't have a Tennessee residence, and they should not be able to register and vote in Tennessee, but it's been happening. And there is a little problem. Tennessee does not even require documented proof of citizenship for overseas civilian votes. So that is just crazy. That's crazy that that's even allowed. So it's the House Elections and Campaign Finance Subcommittee. That will be, matter of fact, tomorrow morning. So call these committees before the committee meeting in the morning. SB 1968, this will be in the local education committee. This requires a director of schools to refer to juvenile court a student who was formerly enrolled in the LEA, who was receiving truancy interventions and then withdrew from the LEA and did not transfer to another LEA. Usually that situation is, okay, now they're going to homeschool. And so now you have them intervening. If you go from, if you have a problem with truancy, you withdraw from an LEA, and instead of being allowed to go to do homeschool, you're going to have a judge involved, okay? There's some serious problems with that, in my opinion. Now, unexcused absences that from a student, I think it was like as low as 5 during the whole year, that would allow that judge, the local juvenile court judge, to determine where you go. I think we've given way too much power to the school districts. I think we've gotten way too comfortable with that. I understand kids need an education. You know, our public schools, some of them do good, some of the teachers do an excellent job, but some of them don't. And I understand you got to have parental involvement as well. But it should bother us that we've just accepted all this time. I know we've gotten used to it. I know it didn't happen overnight. We've done it for years. This idea that the school has that much control over our kids. That will be on the Senate Education Committee for the 25th. If you want more information on that bill and other bills related to homeschool, go to freeyourchildren.com. And you can also find freeyourchildren.com on Facebook. Okay, on February 25th, the Senate Transportation and Safety Committee will hear the first of 2 Real ID bills. The bill, Senate Bill 1783, is sponsored by Senator Johnson. Now, I don't normally tout bills sponsored by Senator Johnson, but this is one of the good ones. It'll be heard at the committee at 9:30 that morning in Senate Hearing Room 1, or you can listen via the video. The deal with this bill is it's going to make it clear that, number one, Real ID is not required in Tennessee. When it's time to renew your license, if you don't want a Real ID, you don't have to get one. But what we have right now is we have people, some of the DMVs are telling the citizens, no, you have to have a Real ID. And this makes it clear that you don't have to, and that you can't be penalized for not having one. So keep that in mind as well. All right, and then House Bill 1504 creates, this is crazy. Now, remember I told you they want to take our rights with Senate Bill 1958 and House Bill 1971. Well, House Bill 1504 creates the Capitol Hill Protection Zone around the Senate Capitol grounds and surrounding state government buildings, including the grounds and roads immediately surrounding the buildings. Requires the Commissioner of Safety to ensure that the Capitol Hill Protection Zone is adequately staffed by law enforcement officers to ensure the safety of state government officials, state government employees, and members of the public. All this at the same time, they're trying to steal our rights, and they want to make sure they got a good security zone around the Capitol. And that bill is sponsored by Lamberth in the House, but he's one of the usual suspects. I assume Johnson is the Senate sponsor, but I couldn't swear to that. Anyway, that's on the House regular calendar. Oh, wow. We may have already missed that. I apologize. I think that was actually this morning. So you may want to check that bill out and see how that turned out. We will follow up once we hear more about that. Okay. Guys, like I said, I can't cover everything. There's some websites that I'm going to recommend. tncss.weebly.com for anything having to do with state sovereignty, state powers, and those type things. Tennessee Firearms Association for anything gun-related, Second Amendment, or Section 26 of the Tennessee Constitution. Tennessee Stands, Tennessee Eagle Forum for just a lot of different types of bills. freeyourchildren.com for homeschool issues, and Tennessee Fair Elections for anything having to do with elections. Are we going to go to war with Iran? Should we? And who gets to decide that according to the Constitution? Did the founders intend for the president to be the one that makes that decision? Now, Iran is, they've been a problematic country for over 40 years. Most of my life, they have been a problem. And I think we should have really dealt with them a long time ago. We should have dealt with them when they took our hostages in 79. We should have done something to them in 83 when they killed all those Marines in Beirut. And then they killed a lot of our soldiers. Some of the more deadly IEDs when we were in Iraq were from Iran. And we know that there were at least some Iranians actively doing these things in Iraq. They weren't just giving the equipment to the Iraqis. And so I think we should have done something a long time ago with Iran, but there's still a way to do this, okay? And I understand they're supposed to have talks this week. Obviously, you can't trust the Iranians, but we still have a constitution. This is not an emergency situation. Back in June, they said, hey, look, we got to do something quick. They're going to have a nuke, and we got to do something before they get the nuke. And then we were told everything was obliterated. And now here it is February. And now the president is going to decide what to do. Hey, guys, like the president or not, and I think he's done some good things, I understand Iran's a problem. I understand our Congress is crap. But we still have a constitution, and we still should want it followed. And one person should not be the one that makes that decision. The Constitution is clear. If you're going to declare war, that's Congress. Okay, it's not just the president deciding, no, we're going to go to war. Because guess what? I've heard things about maybe like a 2-week operation. The enemy gets a vote on these things. You can't just schedule a war for 2 or 3 weeks and, it'll all be fine and well. By the way, you can only do so much without putting boots on the ground. I don't want boots on the ground. Fortunately, the president doesn't want boots on the ground. So, but can we actually achieve our goals if we don't do that? And then maybe we just don't need to do it. No love for Iran here, but I'm just not sure this is a good idea. But I know one thing, good, bad, or ugly, we need to follow the Constitution on this. What does it say about our country if nobody in the Epstein files is really held accountable? More importantly, what is being done to protect our children? Guys, I know you're probably sick of hearing about the Epstein files, but the sick, evil stuff in there, any American in those files needs to be thoroughly investigated. Now, I know there's some people on, and look, I don't personally think that President Trump is involved in any of the more vile things you've read about, but he certainly hasn't been okay with releasing this stuff, and we have all these things that are released that are still redacted. Needs to all be released, and people that are guilty need to pay the price. And I understand not everybody in the files is a pedophile or a pervert, but we can't just turn the page on this. That wraps up this installment of the Informer Report. If you have a news story that you want to alert us to, be sure to send us an email at tninformer.tv@gmail.com. Now, a word from our sponsor, LifeWave, a unique product that uses light reflection to activate the body's own natural energy, supporting healing, improving performance, and combating aging without drugs or stimulants. Check it out, and we'll be right back with our guest, John Louallen.
Light, the energy of life itself. Since the beginning of time, light has sustained us, fueled our growth, and shaped the world. Even Einstein recognized that everything we are is made of light. But what if we could harness the light within us, not just to live, but to renew, restore, and rejuvenate? Introducing LifeWave X39, the first product in the world that activates stem cells using our body's own light. Backed by clinical research, multiple patents, and over 10 years of stem cell research, a revolutionary wearable light technology that unlocks the power of activating our own stem cells with a single, safe, affordable, non-transdermal patch that puts you back in control of how you look, feel, and perform. Unlike drugs or chemicals, X39 works naturally, awakening your body's ability to heal and thrive. It's time to unlock your full potential, restore your vitality, and embrace a healthier, more vibrant you.
Now to our guest, John Louallen. Hey, thank you for joining us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Dave. How are you?
Doing fine and glad to have you. Hey, let's get right
Yes,
to
sir.
it.
Excited to be here with you this evening.
Say that again?
I said excited to be with you this evening.
Okay, well, we're glad to have you. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I live in Pegram. I've lived here in Pegram since 2007. And before I moved to Pegram, I grew up in the Cincinnati, Ohio area. Don't know if your listeners are familiar with Kings Island Amusement Park, but there in Warren County, Ohio. Went to Kings High School. And after I graduated, I went to the University of Cincinnati, got my undergrad degree there. And once I got my undergrad, I was privileged to serve as a deputy sheriff with the Warren County Sheriff's Office. Served there for a little over 8 years. And at that time, I met my beautiful wife, Leah. She lived and grew up in Middle Tennessee her whole life. Met her, we got married, so I moved to the Middle Tennessee area in 2007. Once I moved here, I transitioned from being a sheriff's deputy to I became a federal contractor for the government investigating Medicare and Medicaid fraud. Have done that since 2007. And here in Pegram, once I moved here, that's really when I started to get involved a little bit in politics. We had young children, they were in elementary school, and there's some things going on in our school system at the time that I was just unhappy with. So that's when I decided to get involved in politics and ran for the school board. Served 8 years, 2 terms on the Cheatham County School Board. Had the privilege of serving as chair and vice chair during that time. So felt like we got a lot of things done during my 8 years there. And then once that was finished at that time, made the decision to run for mayor in our small town here in Pegram. Just a few years before that, they instituted a property tax. Not a fan of property taxes. I know taxes are needed in certain situations, especially if you don't have the business space there. But since the tax got instituted, I wanted to have a role in that to make sure the money was being spent properly and wisely. So that's a little bit about, my professional and my political background. That's kind of where I'm at today.
Okay, now Pegram is in Cheatham County, right?
Yes, sir, it is. Yeah, right here in Cheatham County. We're real close to the Davidson County, Cheatham County line. But yeah, here in Cheatham County.
And District 78 is Cheatham, part of Dixon, I think?
Yeah, it's all of Cheatham County. And the easiest way to identify it is just draw a straight line down the middle of Dixon, and it's everything to the east. So that encompasses White Bluff, Burns, the eastern portion of the city of Dixon, and as you go up towards the Charlotte area, east towards Cheatham County. So all of Cheatham County, and like I said, a portion of Dixon.
Okay. And so you decided to run for this higher office. Why again?
So little things like we were talking earlier, just over the past couple of years, some of the things that have been happening at the state level, and a lot of it boils down to just violation and infringement upon our rights. Everywhere from a few years ago, after the COVID instances of COVID, then the shooting at Covenant, all of the things that took the attempts for the red flag laws, and it really just brought it to light and made the decision that I needed to get involved and someone needed to speak up, and I felt that I had the voice to do that.
When we were talking before we started, you mentioned that you definitely carry a gun, and so obviously you believe in the Second Amendment. But let me ask you this: are there any exceptions on the Second Amendment with you?
There are no exceptions, with the exception of a violent felon. They have no business carrying a firearm. Other than that, no, sir. It's awarded to us by the Constitution. Firm believer in our Second Amendment rights. And I really kind of want to put a plug in here real quick for the Tennessee Firearms Association and the good fight that they're doing to protect those rights. But Violent felons have no business carrying a firearm. Other than that, no, sir, it's all right. And it's our right to protect our property and our families.
Okay. So do you have any, and I know that we didn't necessarily talk about this prior, but you kind of got me going here. So are there any Second Amendment bills Second Amendment laws that you'd like to see changed or passed when you get in?
So I have a big problem with what's going on with the intent to go armed, and very disappointed in the amount of legislators that did not speak up regarding the appeal of that. But I am pleased, and I'll use an example of Representative Fritz. And there's some other legislators in there and some legislation this session that's trying to deal specifically with that phrase, the intent to go armed.
Right.
But disappointed that Moore did not speak up regarding the appeal of the ruling where it was unconstitutional. I am hopeful this session that some of those will get passed, specifically some of the legislation by Representative Fritz.
Okay. So if you're elected, what are some of the other things you'd like to do legislation-wise?
One of the things, fiscal responsibility is big for me. And, I like to use the joke. We got a spending problem in Nashville, and we've got a lot of legislators that are spending like drunken sailors. So it's always easy to spend someone else's money. And Dave, I know that you know these numbers, but just in the past 10 years, our state budget has increased by almost 27 billion. That's a B, billion dollars. As Republicans, we're supposed to be on the side of less government, lower taxes, not inflating and creating programs. And in the past 10 years, 27 billion is unacceptable. So that's a big heartache of mine. Not only how those dollars are being spent, but how we're getting that money. And hopefully we'll have some time here in a bit to get into property taxes and how it's getting out of control at the local level and how it's affecting our seniors. But we got a spending problem in Nashville.
If you want to hit property tax, go ahead. You can do that. We got time.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have situations where right now local municipalities and county government can set the property tax rate. We have situations where, certain cities like Davidson County and Nashville, outrageous increases. And then you have other areas that it might be only 2 or 3%. And then others are, 30 to 35% increases. We have seniors who own their home, who have been paying taxes on this their entire lives, and they're being priced out of their homes. That needs to stop. I do know there's some legislation out there, and don't get me wrong, there is a movement out there because to stop state property tax. It hasn't been instituted, I think, since World War II. Obviously, that's going to go up for a vote, and yes, we need to get that worked out in our state constitution. But we really need to focus on property taxes at the county and the city municipal level. I know there's some legislation out there this session where people are wanting to cap that 2 or 3%. That's great, but I want to take it a step further. And people, if the government wants more of our money, the people need to have a say so. And what I would propose, if I'm lucky enough to serve, I would propose legislation where any government, whether it be county or municipality, wanted more of our money and wanted to increase our property taxes, the community would have a say so. We would put up for a vote. And that way it does a couple things. It gives the community a true say so in what they want funded, the amount, but it also makes the politicians and the department heads more accountable. Because if you have to go and put an issue on the ballot and go before the public and ask for more money, you have to explain why. You have to demonstrate that you're spending it appropriately, wisely, it's not wasteful. So that's something, a piece of legislation that I would definitely aggressively pursue. Again, some of the things going on now are great, but ultimately, if we're going to deal with it, let's deal with it and give the people a say so and put it to a vote.
Okay.
Because I know personally, if the government wants more of my money, I want a say so and be able to vote on that. And if for some reason I don't feel like we need the new shiny municipal building, then I'm going to vote no. And then local government will live within some.
Now, you spoke about taxes, and of course, Tennessee, we're spending tax money, and of course, we get a lot of our money from the federal government. We get about 40% of our budget from the federal government. Do you think that's a little too much dependence on the federal government, and what would you do to change that?
I absolutely. So, and the interesting thing is the federal government gets their money from us as well.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
Obviously it's almost like, we're being taxed by the state and the feds. And everybody's got their hand out. State, local, even federal level, we've got a spending problem. And I've always said this, it's always easy to spend someone else's money. So it's always nice to have that nice shiny object when it's someone else's money. So we not only have a spending problem at the state level, we have it at all levels, from the municipal level all the way up to the feds. And again, federal dollars come from me as well, comes from you.
Right.
So the state and feds are getting taxes from us.
You said you were on the school board for 8 years?
Yes, sir. 8 years. served that as chair and vice chair a majority of that time. So it was 8 years. It was very rewarding.
So any ideas on what we need to do for our education system?
Yeah, so I will tell you this, throwing money at a problem is not the answer. You can look at some of the largest school districts across the country that continue to throw money there, and that's not the answer. Well, a couple things. We need to allow teachers to teach in their classroom. And I do know that we do have to have standards. We do have to hold teachers accountability, but we have a situation where so many teachers are so concerned about the test and the test scores being tied to their evaluation, they're really teaching to the test. And they're not allowed to teach their classroom. And I really like to use the analogy, you can't coach every kid the same way. You can't teach every kid the same. Some of us learn differently, and the teachers, these test scores have been rammed down their throats so much, and especially with it being tied to their evaluations, they're not allowed to teach and be teachers. And a majority of them do an amazing job, but they're more concerned about the test, and that's what's pushed on them.
Well, and especially in the metro districts, you have the additional problem of all the non-English speaking kids that have been pushed on us.
Absolutely. And those teachers are still expected to perform, have those high test scores. And if they don't, a portion of their evaluation are tied to those test scores. And that's not fair. That's not fair to the teachers, and it's not fair to the students.
Yeah. Of course, our tax dollars are providing for all of that.
Oh, absolutely.
Anything else you'd like to see done in the schools? I mean, there's a lot of issues in our schools, and after 8 years, I'm sure you probably saw most of the problems we're dealing with. So you have any other ideas on what you might like to deal with there school wise?
Sure. I will tell you, and this also goes back to teachers. The expectations of our teachers, they're expected to be teachers, social workers, parents. A big problem that I see is we need more parental involvement at home. We need homes with mothers and fathers. That's not to say anything derogatory towards those that don't have that, but we need whole households. And I use the analogy, if a child is not going to respect their mother or father at home, what makes us think they're going to go to school and then at that point not become a distraction or respect their teacher if they don't respect their own parents? So a majority of this starts at home, and parents setting high expectations for their children, because whether it be children or adults, wherever you set the bar, that's where most people are going to meet it. So expectations need to be raised at home, more parental involvement, and we have those high same standards at our schools.
Yeah. Of course, you can't legislate those kind of fixes. But
No, sir, you cannot. But hopefully, if we have enough legislators that aren't afraid to get out there and speak to the core issues and not be afraid of some of the negative feedback. A lot of these men and women that hold these offices do carry a lot of clout, and their word means a lot. And if they just had the courage to get out and speak out and talk about what's really wrong and what's going on, it could go a long way.
right. Well, and of course, there's also the dollar sign attached to each child's head, which is why a lot of districts like, well, okay, this is a problem child, but we need to keep them here because we get paid for that. And if we
Sure.
lose population, we don't get paid, which I want to hit on another topic, since we're talking about schools and education. Where are you at on the vouchers?
So, and this is, and I was expecting this question, so I'm just going to shoot it to you straight and then try to give an explanation before all the ugly mailers and everybody attacks me. I don't support the voucher system. I do support school choice and parents having a choice, but the way that the current vouchers are set up, I don't support it. In my mind, it's fiscally irresponsible, and there's just way too many questions. Everywhere from important legislation like this, it was pushed through, everywhere from having the special session to everywhere from not only that, but even with the state constitution. Our state constitution says that we're responsible for public education. It doesn't say anything about us being responsible for sending kids to private schools. There's a lack of transparency in this bill.
Yep.
We don't even know where the money's going, who it's going to. We do have a pretty good idea that a majority of the funding are going to kids who are already in private school. So the intent the way that it was explained to me was to go to those children to get them out of bad schools. Well, a majority of the money is already going to children who are in private schools. So again, I know the attack ads will come from the groups that say he's not pro-choice, he's not for parents, he's against teachers. No, this is just bad legislation. Very school choice, a perfect example. When I was on the school board in Cheatham County, our parents here do have school choice. We have several schools that are level 5 schools. Specifically, I'll use Kingston Springs Elementary as an example. It's been a level 5 school for 6 or 7 years, one of the best elementary schools in the entire state. Well, parents in Cheatham County, we have open enrollment. So if a parent from another elementary school wants to send their child to one of the best elementary schools in the state, being Kingston Springs Elementary, they're able to do that. So there are ways of school choice, and for parents to have choices, but not for taxpayers to fund that and sending their kids to private schools.
Is that a county choice in terms of allowing?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so any county could do that. They could say, hey, you want to send your kid here, that you can do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So as a school board, that's one of the things we did. We changed the policy to give parents a choice. Goes back to, where I do support parent choice, where we have open enrollment here in Cheatham County, and we have for years, where a parent can choose to send their kid to any of the 3 high schools, any of the middle schools, or any of the elementary schools for any reason, whether it be convenience, academics, but yes, they have that choice. So parents here, again, in Cheatham County as an example, that's something that a school board can do and that we did do, and parents have that choice.
Yeah. I see the vouchers as, we're throwing money at it. We're still not dealing with the failing schools, but we're going to give money to a family that already has a kid in private school. And I hear the argument that, well, it's their money. Well, no, it's actually tax dollars, because if it's their money, my kids are out of school, so I'm still paying taxes. I want a refund.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot with me goes back to constitutional issues. And our state constitution says that our state is responsible for funding public education. Nothing about giving money to parents for a choice, and that choice being sending their kid to private school.
Yeah.
Again, I respect that choice, but that shouldn't be on the back of taxpayers.
Right, absolutely. Any other ideas on legislation?
Another thing besides the property tax, we just have a situation. I know you mentioned some of the other bills. Our freedoms are under attack, and we need strong representation there that's going to take that seriously. Anything that encroaches on our rights, or anything that violates the Constitution, that needs to be addressed. And something else I find a little concerning is maybe it shouldn't be a popularity contest on how many bills someone can file. Maybe we should focus on the good bills and the bad bills and making those amendments and corrections, and maybe even some repeals, instead of having a competition of who can file new bills. Because I can tell you, more laws isn't the answer. We have plenty of laws on the books. We need to enforce them, make them better, and again, not have that what appears to be competition. Hey, I filed 15 bills this session. Well, are they good bills? What about the bills that we have on the books that aren't good bills, and address that? So that's something, if given the opportunity to serve, I would definitely focus on.
Yeah. Well, we have no shortage of laws, that's for sure. And they did reduce the number that in the legislature that they can file this year, I think down from 15 to either 10 or 12. That's still way too many, because, there's no way that with what goes into just 10 bills,
Yes, sir.
with everything, because, these guys are going to be co-sponsoring bills, and the House guys will be co-sponsoring with, the Senate. There's just too much to know it, to know and know it well enough to argue it. But, a lot of them don't bother with that, because a lobbyist comes to them and tells them, hey, here's the bill, we want you to pass it. And in some cases, they might give them 2 or 3 talking points. Of course,
Yes, sir.
that talking point is the lobbyist talking point. And a lot of them either aren't inclined, or just, in some cases, don't have the time to really do the research on the legislation. So, I think it would be a good thing if we put a serious limit on the number of bills. I mean, I think it's something like 1,500 or 2,000. I could be off, but I know it's a lot every year that go through. Now, I'm not saying they all pass, but still, that's a lot to look at. It's just way too
and it's
much.
impossible.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's impossible for anyone to. And a perfect example is last week. I was on the Hill and I attended the Education Committee hearing meeting, and it was very obvious within the first 15 minutes that a majority of the legislators had not even read the bills that were being discussed. We're asking questions, and some of the responses from the sponsor was, "It's in the bill." So just an example, not being prepared, but then also if you have 1,000+ pieces of legislation, it's impossible. And again, it leads back to, Lane, you mentioned legislators leaning on lobbyists and getting their talking points and direction from them. And it just opens up Pandora's box.
Yeah, and those lobbyists are there every day during session, and even I'm sure they meet them at other times. And most people, most working, we can't be there all the time.
Yes, sir.
We can make a difference, though, and just want to make a little plug here. Earlier, last week when that SB 1958, we found out about that in the morning,
Real quick.
early morning,
Yeah.
and enough people were able to get the word out. And I think that's the only reason the bill did not pass. It's not dead, but it didn't pass.
Right.
So,
Well, I heard there was something in a complete grassroots effort, something like 10,000 emails were sent in opposition to that. So that's a perfect example.
Right.
Grassroots effort does work.
yeah, Tennessee Stands had 10,600 emails, but that doesn't necessarily count everybody else. I mean, I'm sure there was even more than that. There were probably some people who sent their own emails. There may be on some other organizations, and I know there were a lot of phone calls. So, but yeah, that's
Absolutely.
great. We got a lot of different grassroots organizations, and we need to pull together as much as we can, especially now that we know, all doubt's been removed what they want to do to us. So
Yeah. And it goes back to what I mentioned earlier. Just it's another example of people in Nashville, representatives think that they know better and infringing upon our rights.
Absolutely.
It's got to stop.
So what, if any, PACs or other organizations have endorsed you?
So I will be completely honest and transparent. I don't think all PACs are bad. And I'm not saying that I would never work with one, but I don't like PACs and their involvement in our politics. As of right now, I've not accepted any money or help from a political action committee, and I have no plans to. Now, that doesn't mean if something, a great organization, for example, if the Tennessee Firearms Association wanted to come out and say, "Hey, John, we like what you're doing," or some of those other organizations, that's not to say that I wouldn't have some serious conversations, but I don't like the involvement of PACs and have no plans to accept money from them because there's strings. There's the expectation. There's always strings attached when people start writing checks like that. So all of my support and donations have come from friends, neighbors, and people in the area.
Right. Yeah, and like you say, not all PACs are bad, but it does depend on the PAC. And just so you know, that the TFA won't endorse, but what they will do is they do donate to people that they have reason to believe support their position. And by the way, they'll do a survey. There will be a survey before the primary that they'll send out to all the candidates, and then they just post those surveys for everybody to see.
Right.
So
and that's a perfect example. And it's all public record, but you can go and look at some of the legislators, especially the ones that have been there for several years, and you look at their donations. There's a problem in my mind when an elected official, 80 or 90% of their campaign contributions come from PACs and not their constituents.
I agree.
Again, back to, there are some good ones out there, but when a majority of your contributions and support are coming from PACs, that's something I'm not willing to do.
Right. Now, you do have an opponent, only one that I know of. So here's the question. Why are you a better choice?
So I have a unique background. My background in law enforcement, since 2007, being a sheriff's deputy, and then now investigating Medicare and Medicaid fraud. What I like to say, most people don't like having difficult conversations or confrontation. My entire professional career, that's what I've done. Dealing with situations that others don't want to deal with. It's the worst day of their life. what others would consider a difficult conversation, I've done that since I was in my early 20s. So I think with that unique background, on top of being on the school board for 8 years and a small town mayor, has prepared me to go to Nashville and have those difficult conversations when it's needed and stand up for my people. I'm a conservative, and probably if there's 10 issues, I'm probably going to agree with my fellow, Republicans 7, 8, even maybe sometimes 10 times. But the one or two issues where my constituents don't want it, don't need it, it's not good for us. I have a career of telling people no, having those difficult conversations or what others perceive as telling no. So my background and also just my experience dealing with that will allow me not to cave to political pressure. And if the folks of District 78 aren't in support of something, it's not going to bother me to say no.
Okay, well, that was kind of my next question, because, a lot of people during the campaign, they say the right things, and I believe a lot of them mean it when they said it, but then they get up there and they're not prepared for the pressure from the governor, the so-called leadership, of course, the speaker, if you're in the House, or the lieutenant governor, if you're in the Senate, and then a lot of their peers. I mean,
Right.
I think a lot of people they're not prepared for that. They went up there with good intentions, and then they got overwhelmed, and then they get into situations where, everybody is on board but them. And,
Right.
it's kind of hard to be a Massey type for a lot of people, I mean, to be the only no in the room, that's hard for a lot of people. And,
It is. But, I was raised by a Marine and an ex-cop. And then just again, my professional background, everywhere from walking into someone's home and you're the bad guy and telling people what they should and shouldn't be doing, to testifying again, what most people would consider a difficult conversation or a difficult situation, I've done for the past 20 plus years. So where a lot of people, when they go into that environment, they do go up there with good intentions, but they've never had pressure like that. I've testified hundreds of times, and anyway, just the pressure it has been on, and I won't cave. That's what I do. That's my personality, and I've got the professional background to prove it. And even on the school board, a situation where you have a subset of parents who really want something that's going to benefit their child. Well, as a school board member, I can't worry about the 20 or 30 kids that those parents, I need to do what's best for the 6,000 kids.
Right.
So anytime we made a decision on the school board, not so much as mayor in a small town, but on the school board, 49% of the people are happy, and then the 51% aren't. So it's vice versa, but I've dealt with that for years, and I'm ready for it, as ready as anyone can be.
Are there any other issues in the legislature, or that have been in the legislature in recent years that you would like to bring up, things that you would like to do or think should be done or stopped or whatever?
Right. So, and I'll give credit where credit was due. When they tried to institute the red flag laws, I was glad to see that was defeated. And again, goes back to, I think there was a lot of grassroots effort in there and political pressure. So I do want to give credit where credit is due, but that's a perfect example of where the right decision was made. But going to be a staunch supporter of anything and standing up to anything that's going to violate our rights. And really go with faith, freedom, and fiscal discipline. Those are really my three mottos, and if I stick to that and stick to my guns, I'm going to do the right thing. But really and here's a novel, crazy idea. How about we start sending people to Nashville, whether this is their first time or those that have been there for years, and stop worrying about getting all the credit and the headlines, and how about we just listen? And how about we listen to the people that we're supposed to represent, which is doing our job, and go up there and do the right thing? I think if we do a lot more listening and not worrying about taking credit for action, we're going to get a lot more things done.
I agree. You mentioned the budget earlier. We have all this dependence on the federal government, but we also have to take a lot of garbage from the federal government. And I know that there's This year again, there will be nullification legislation. Well, it's actually it's a nullification process bill that'll be back up there again. What do you think about that? Where are you at on the issue of nullification?
So I will tell you, and this is the one thing I learned this on the school board, there is always strings attached when there's money involved. Grants, money, and it's a situation where nothing's free. There's always strings attached, and we need to be, especially with an economy like Tennessee, we need to be as self-sufficient as possible. Right. So we don't have those threats, that oversight. And we need to be as self-sufficient as possible on our end. And I don't like the thought of someone everywhere from being a small town mayor, from the county and the state level telling me what I should and shouldn't do, and just at the state level don't like the threats and things coming from the federal government. Hey, if you don't do A, B, and C, we're cutting off your funding.
Right. Now, but okay, and I know you probably haven't seen the actual nullification process, Bill, but I think if we're ever going to get things back in line in this country, states have to be willing to tell the federal government. No, our state actually did that a few years ago in 2021. Sure. They don't like to advertise it, but they actually did during COVID. They did a resolution. I understand it's just a resolution. And they laid out, hey, look, we only gave the federal government certain powers. We retained everything else. And if you continue to push, we will take action to nullify your action. We will take actions to nullify what you're trying to do to us. And we don't just mean we're going to go to the federal court and grovel. We mean Right. We're going to take legislative action. And is that something you would support?
Yeah, absolutely. And it goes back to what I mentioned earlier. There's always strings attached.
Right.
And it's like Big Brother's working the puppet. Absolutely would support that. I'm not familiar with the legislation, haven't seen it, but absolutely would support something like, because again, going back to doing what's best for Tennessee, and if it's not what's best for us, then we don't need to do it. We need to push back. And a lot of that going back to that pressure that we talked about, right. Not caving to any type of political pressure and doing what's best for the people.
All right. Closing thoughts?
Really just, I'm excited about this opportunity, excited about being on your show. And really, I just encourage people, not only for the race in District 78, but for all of the upcoming races, for all the open seats, do your research on people. Just because someone has been there for several years doesn't mean they're doing their job. Don't listen to the talking points. Google's your friend. It's amazing what you can find out about someone in a 10-minute Google search, especially those who have voting records, whether it be myself, 8 years on the school board and 4 as mayor, I have a voting record.
Right.
Check it out. And then our current legislators, check out their voting record. It's not hard to find. And then ask questions. And being an informed voter is a powerful voter.
Yeah, absolutely. More people need to do that. So
Yes,
you
sir.
do have a website, and people can donate if they want, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But even more than that, I'm open to sitting down and having discussions with people, answering questions. And I'm also the type of person, this is really the ex-cop in me. If I don't know the answer, I'll find out. And I'm going to take a stand on things. And I'm not going to play the political game and talk around an issue. If I'm asked a question, I'm going to answer it. And if I don't know the answer, I'll get it and get back with people. So again, an open book, and just encourage people to reach out and ask questions.
All right. Any upcoming events?
Yeah, I actually have a meet and greet in Ashland City on the 7th of March. It'll be at the Hampton Inn there in Ashland City, 3:30 to 5 o'clock, real laid back, come and go as you please. Again, with the making myself accessible to the public and just answering any questions. Not going to spend a lot of time and get up there and give a stump speech and say how great I am. I'm going to be there to answer questions and get to know people.
All right. Well, sounds good. Well, hey, appreciate you coming on. Glad to have you. We still got plenty of time for the primary. Try to get you back on at least once if you're interested.
That'd be great. I'd really, kind of give an update on how things are going, and especially I'd like to come back once we get through the legislator and any some discussion on some good and bad legislation,
Right.
and maybe what I would have done differently. Again, just to give the people a choice on where I stand, and hey, yes, this was good, or this is what I would have done differently.
Okay. Well, hey, sounds good. Well, hey, thanks again for being with us, and good luck to you.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Dave.
Take care. I want to
Thank
thank the audience for taking the time to watch our program tonight. It doesn't cost anything to subscribe, so please be sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons, as well as the notification bell so you never miss an episode. We appreciate your support. Our goal is to have 1,000 subscribers by the end of February, so please subscribe and share us with your friends. We need a little less than 80 now. Check out our audio podcast on iHeartRadio, Spotify, and other platforms as well. Sign up for our weekly newsletter at our website, teeninformer.com. Find and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Monty Fritz will be speaking tomorrow, February 24th, 6 p.m. at the Jackson County GOP. Address is New Hope Baptist Church, 311 North Murray in Gainesboro, Tennessee. He will also be speaking Friday morning, February 27th, from 8:30 to 10 a.m. Central at Shoney's in Crossville. That's at 4148 Highway 127 North. If you haven't heard Monty, you need to get out and hear Monty. Join us next Monday, March 2nd at 7 p.m. when our guest will be Tiffany Boyd of Free Your Children. She'll be here to discuss homeschool education. She's concerned about certain bills that have been filed in the General Assembly. And then at 8:30 p.m. Central, our guest will be Dr. Joseph Sansone, here to discuss legislation that declares mRNA vaccines a bioweapon. I think after COVID, we know that now, or more people are having to admit it than wanted to. You need to hear this. Also, this Wednesday, 9 p.m., we'll do a special show with Richard Archie on the danger posed to our rights by SB 1958 and House Bill 1971. If you want to hear what Richard has to say about that, tune in. But hey, we're not done yet tonight. We'll be back at 8:30 with our second show of the night with our guest, Claiborne Thornton of the Tennessee Homeschool Education Association. Please take the time to check out the other shows brought to you by West Tennessee TV by going to westtennesseetv.com or myparistv.com. There you can find links to the Mike Weatherford Show and Sportscast with Jeremy Bucklow. Tomorrow, Mike welcomes to the show Burton Staggs to talk about ongoing cases throughout the state of Tennessee, including a few national stories, which include the missing person case in Arizona, Nancy Guthrie. Next Sunday, it's episode 3 of the Spring Sports Preview featuring Edward Geddes, head coach of the Patriots tennis team. That's it for now. Good night from Paris. Tennessee, that is.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I thought you did fine. You're fast on your feet.